Hey there, welcome. Welcome to another episode of Create or Die. This is your host, Ike Allred. Just want to thank you again for choosing to listen to this little podcast. I know there are a million things you could tune into, and the fact that you chose our little program, it just warms my heart. Even if you're just using this as an opportunity to be lulled to sleep, I'm honored to help in any way I can. But seriously, this is not one of those episodes. You don't want to sleep through this one. In this episode, I sit down with Hillary Harmon, multi-talented creative extraordinaire, from graphic design to photography, and even the written word. Hillary is the complete package. I've had the pleasure of working alongside Hillary for the past 4.5 years, and I'm all the better for it. All right, let's get this party started. So, Hillary, thanks for taking the time to chat with me on this little podcast thing I have going over the lunchtime break.
Yeah, it's fun.
We've been working together now for 4 years, right? So it's over 4
4 and a
years.
half.
That's crazy. Where did that time go?
Feels like forever, and it also feels like yesterday.
For sure, there's been a lot of things happen during that time frame, and in both of our lives and at work and everything. But it's been a good ride, and always loved working with you and your awesome attitude for just getting stuff done and not griping about it. So, but one thing you probably shared with me at some point or another, and I probably have pieces of it, but I'd love to hear kind of your origin story around design and photography and what got you headed down that path, maybe, and how you find yourself here in this current place.
Well, to be honest, it's a wild road.
That's what we like.
My journey into this job was not even close to direct. I started out at BYU as pre-med, and I was like, I'm going to be a doctor. And then I took Chem 101, and I was like, medical field is not for me. The intro class was enough. And then I was like, oh, maybe I could do nursing. And I was like, I just like big time respect for people who are willing to wipe other people's butts, but I just don't think that's me. And then I was like, well, psychology is really interesting. And so then I switched my degree to psychology, and I was like, listening to people bitch about their problems all day long sounds like the worst job in the world. I don't want to do that. And then I think I did visual arts that one actually lasted like a year and a half. I stuck in visual arts. So that was a lot of painting, mixed media stuff, which was really fun.
Yeah.
I took intro to photography during that time, but you had to be in the photography program to take more than just the intro class. So that was the only class that I took. I also took like a intro to design class just because I thought it was fun, but my major was not in that, so I couldn't take any more of those either.
Yeah.
So my final degree was public relations because I like to write, and so that just also I think it just fit me better with learning style because I do better in group projects and overall general ideas, understanding concepts and coming up with ideas. That is more of how I function, not necessarily memorizing and regurgitating facts. I'm not as good at that. So once I got into PR, I actually started doing well in school, which was nice. And then, so my first few jobs after college were PR jobs. It was kind of, entry level PR, coming up with press releases and managing social media pages and kind of for the smaller companies. I worked for the University of Utah Healthcare, and so they don't have a huge PR team, but they would need like a pamphlet designed or something, and you're like, can you make a pamphlet? And I was like, yeah, I learned InDesign in my one class at BYU. I think I can figure this out. And then they also had a photography team in their marketing team. So I would kind of go, and I just kind of got to dabble in a lot of things there and help out wherever I could, because I was just, they're cheap labor. So I would just do whatever I could help out in. And then
the job experience.
Yeah. And then a few more jobs like that. Ended at a beauty company where very, very small beauty company. And so I got to work with the executives pretty close, and he was very picky about how he liked, his products being designed. And his business being represented on social media and stuff like that. So he was very involved in all of the design process, and which was helpful for me because he was very good with Illustrator and different products like that. And so he helped me a lot make sure that what I was creating was up to his standards. So, like we'd do a lot of trade shows and make really big prints. And so he wanted to make sure there weren't any issues before it got printed. So that was good experience for me to kind of learn the more technical processes of design. And my job title there was junior marketing manager. So who knows what that means? It was just a whole lot of everything. But yeah, one of the main things I did there was like we redesigned the product packaging. So that was really fun to like kind of see all of it printed and in hand and cohesive with all the different products, seeing them go together. And then I came to MX, or am I not supposed to say that?
Oh, no, you're fine.
Yeah. Then I came here, and I think when I started, my design skills and photography skills were like at this. I know the basics, mostly. I think you guys gave me the benefit of the doubt based on eye. She's got the eye, but the rest of it, I don't know. We'll hope she rises to the task. But I don't know. I feel like in the last 4.5 years, I learned so much, and it's been really cool working with our team because we had so many people who are so good at what they do.
Sure.
So being able to kind of shadow and learn from all these different experts has pushed me in my career a lot, I would say. So that's been a cool experience.
That's awesome. It's neat to hear kind of your school experience, and you didn't know quite where you wanted to be, and you tried things and evolved and were introduced to some design / photography courses and art stuff, it sounded like, as well, and eventually found your way into a career around PR, and I think it was implied, but I assume that included some copywriting. I know you've done a little bit of copywriting for us at MX as well.
It's hard to switch like from writing to designing. Because like it's similar mentality, right? Like even if you consider, photography, design, writing, psychology, like all of these different fields, PR, all of it. It's all about like communicating and figuring out what somebody else is wanting to hear or what motivates them, or, whatever gets into their heads the way that they need to receive it. It's all the same. It's just different tactics. And so, but switching in between them is hard because like that's why they're specialists in all of those different categories. And so if I'm going to be writing, and there's also so many different types of writing, right? Like my type of writing style was a lot more like, what's the word?
Like creative or like conversational
yeah, but also like I want to say like slapstick, but that's not the word I'm thinking of. Like satire. Like I like writing things that's kind of funny. So like I ended up writing a blog, and that went really well for a while, and that was like my favorite type of writing. Or like writing I like writing about like emotionally charged things. Like that's kind of fun for me.
Yeah, I can see that.
But like, I don't know. I think writing things for products is just not as interesting to me. Like the passion just doesn't light when it comes. And so I can design something that's pretty, that kind of evokes more emotion. But then when you want me to write about it, it's like I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's different.
I agree. And I agree that is hard to jump from, visual creative work and kind of even though reading is visual, but it's psychological, some other level that does make it difficult. So as I've mentioned before on this podcast and in other areas, that, I consider myself someone who suffers from creative ADD, and I like lots of different areas, but for the most part, it's around visual creative pursuits and not so much writing and this, if you want to call it, the psychological side of things. So that's impressive that you're able to do that, but there probably is a transition thing. You can't spend 15 minutes designing a brochure and then immediately jump 15 minutes into creating perfect copy for that brochure. It probably, you got to get up and go get some caffeine and decompress and come back.
Totally. Yeah. And writing for me is like, I think writing is such a talent, and skill that the more you develop it in specific areas like that, like the better you're going to get. And so I don't spend a lot of time writing in the world of like marketing and so that's just a skill that I haven't honed in as well. And so I think if I were to spend a lot of time doing it, then I could probably bounce back and forth a lot easier.
Yeah.
But since I haven't written for that type of thing in a very long time, it's hard to pop back into it. But I mean, there's other things I do. Like, so I was photographing a wedding yesterday, and the bride is, she's a very creative person. And her husband mentioned that in their vows. He said, "My favorite thing about you is your creativity and how that comes out in from everything to your interior design, to your hairstyling, to your cooking," because she's a hairstylist. And so she's like, and I just related to that so much because like I love to cook and I love making things fancy and I'm all about presentation. Like the table setting is 50% of the creative process of cooking. And decorating for holidays or interior design or like planning the outfits that make the photo better or like getting the hair and makeup done that makes the photo better. You know, like there's so many pieces of every project. Like we were talking about, like if it's a pamphlet, then somebody writes it, somebody designs it, somebody comes up with the idea in the first place, and then somebody executes. Like there's just so many points of the process when it comes to any creative
pursuit or
yeah. Anything creative. And so
that's awesome that that you find joy in all of those different parts of the process. And maybe in some cases when you're doing it on your own or when you're at a smaller company, it's like it's a necessary evil. You have to learn how to do the makeup or the hair so that your photos will turn out better, or you have to learn about some lighting so your photos will turn out better, or whatever. And I know from what I know about you and your love for interior design and holidays and cooking, it sounds like, which I think you're gonna have to we're gonna have to create some type of event where you need to bring in your cooking to work so we can all sample it. But tell me, do you find that your skills as a graphic designer helps inform your skills as a photographer versus someone who creates beautiful spaces as an interior designer, or do you think they're different things completely?
I think it depends. Like you could have, I think there's two parts to that. So like kind of how when I first started, I remember it was mentioned like you have a good eye for this. And that's something that I hear a lot with all these different expressions of creativity is like I think I have an eye for visuals, for good visuals. So I think that's one piece of it, right? Like I think in order to be, well, okay, but here's another example. One of my best friends is a photographer and graphic designer who also studied PR, and she's told me before that she doesn't think that she naturally has an eye for that stuff. Like she had to learn, the science and the math behind what looks good to people. What makes a good photo composition. And like that was something that she had to work really hard on to like master that. And so I think, you have interior designers who are so good at what they do, and they maybe are terrible graphic designers, but they're like incredible interior designers because they've put in the work and the research and they know the brands and they know the people. And then, you know what I mean? Like there's so much to know about every different type of creative expression that I think you could have people who it's like the jack of all trades, master of none, right? Like the people who like I relate to that where I feel like I can dabble in all these things and I think I do a pretty good job, but like I know that there's someone who could do 5,000 times better at each thing than what I can do. But to that argument as well, like nobody sees what I see. Nobody sees what you see. And so from that perspective, like we all have our unique contribution to things because whether you have the eye or not, like what you see is different than what somebody else next to you is going to see, even in the same space or in the same design piece or, and there are general rules that you follow and the math and the science behind, like what people are going to notice first or what they're going to read first or, where their eye is going to be drawn. But I think you can do that in many ways.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect answer, and that was kind of what I was hoping to get out of you is that idea about having an eye for design or visual expression, creative expression. I like that term. I'm going to steal it for future episodes. But but because I agree that it does. I'm looking for the right fancy word, but it does transcend different areas of expertise. Like if you are someone like yourself, which I would totally agree and will continue to tell you, is that you do have a great eye for design, and that is something that I think if you're blessed with that out of the gates, then you've got a leg up as go down different areas. But then it's awesome that you mentioned that your friend took the time to learn the science behind her craft and eventually can become a skilled technician, artist, and then that those things can be learned. And I agree. Yeah, I mean, as is obvious from this podcast, I struggle with my words sometimes to find them. For others, it's a piece of cake. So
you put your words out through pictures. That's a different skill.
Right, exactly. Maybe I picked the wrong medium for this. No. But yeah, so there are all of these different areas of creative expression that you dabble in and are expert in, I would argue, in several of those areas. But do you have a favorite part of the creative process, whether it's, part of graphic design or photography, or maybe it's relatable among all of those? Is there one part of that process that you enjoy more than others?
I mean, I think all creatives are like, we're idea people, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's the idea, it's the dreaming. Like my husband is very much a realist, and he's like always telling me to get my head out of the clouds, and we're like the perfect pair because I dream up the ideas and he comes up with the realistic way to make it happen, like
That's a good combo.
It is a good combo. Sometimes he talks me down, but most of the time we work together to kind of make the dream or the visualization kind of come to life. But I think that's the most satisfying part is when you have an idea,
yeah,
and when something pops into your head and then you can just make it, like make it real. I think that's probably the best part.
Is the initial idea like coming up with the big ideas? Like if I were to relate it to branding, if you were to create that mood board, is that the funnest part, or the actual execution and maybe seeing it physically?
I think the execution, yeah, like seeing it come together, like especially when you came up with the idea, right? Like if it was your idea from the beginning and then you see it come to life, it's like, oh my gosh, that is just, it's cool. It's like I dreamed this before it happened, and then it's like looking into the future, kind of. It's like making your future happen. Like you have this idea, you have this dream, and then some people are just idea peoples, and then they're like, okay, I'm gonna find somebody to make this happen, but I'm the kind of person who has an idea and I want to make it happen. I want to be the one to, because it's hard sometimes for me to share my vision, I think, with words, like you were saying. Like sometimes words are hard, and it's easier to just do it and to just draw it or like make it, or whatever it is that you're trying to do. But yeah, I think that's my favorite part.
Okay. So basically every part of the process.
All of the parts, yeah.
No, just kidding. I totally know what you're saying. And as you continue to grow and reach those next levels of your career, I think, and it was a challenge for me as well, is because you've been scrappy, you've had these different jobs where maybe you've worked at smaller places and you've been the person who can see things from beginning to end. As you scale that and start to delegate to others or collaborate, which you mentioned earlier, you do like working as part of a team, but is that delegation is hard because like you mentioned as well, everyone has their own voice. They see things differently. I see things different than you, and vice versa. And so it's subjective, and you have to take this project that, oh man, it sounds super fun, and I would love to be the one to design it and then to execute on every little piece of it, and then sit back and at the end and be able to say I did this. But then at the next level, as you grow into art director roles, managing people, being able to delegate, what are your thoughts about that? Have you had those opportunities in your career up to this point?
Yeah, so this might sound weird coming like 'cause you're my boss, so so take this as you will. But
Yeah.
I think like one of the reasons I have so many different hobbies outside of work is because part of me likes having work be work,
Yeah.
and it's not like an emotionally charged part of my creativity. It's a little bit more structured. So my livelihood, my paycheck is dependent on this job, and so I'm going to make sure that my
Yeah.
boss is happy. I'm going to make sure that the work gets done. I'm going to make sure that I'm checking things off. And it's more, it's way more structured than any other creative outlet that I have. I
Yeah.
mean, my photography business is pretty structured, but since I'm the boss, like I have a
Right.
little bit more like freedom when it comes to making decisions and calling the shots. And so I think, I don't know, I think sometimes that's harder for me to
Yeah.
put my emotions into my job because
Sure. Yeah.
I want, I end up using so much of my emotions in my other things, like in my photography, in my, Christmas decorations, or my Halloween party that I
Right.
spent 3 months preparing for. Like, there's so much of my heart is in those things where it's something that makes me happy. It's something that makes other people happy. One type of photography that I do a lot is boudoir. And I feel like it's kind of this weird taboo
Yeah.
kind of segment of photography, but the best part about it is that I shoot mostly women, 90% of women,
Yeah.
and they come in super insecure, super nervous, and like they're scared to be vulnerable like this because it's a weird situation that you're never
Sure.
in at any other part of your life.
Yeah.
How often do you pose naked in front of a stranger? So it's
Yeah.
weird. But then at the end, they get these pictures and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel beautiful. Like you made me feel beautiful, like
Yeah.
exactly how I am right now. And that is a rare experience for a lot of women, I think. And so,
Well, men too. Let me tell you, even like you've
there's
taken
a
my head.
total untapped market for boudoirs. I'm convinced.
Well, that aside, even just fully clothed headshots, you know, I see myself and I'm like, where did that chin come from? I don't remember.
Right? You're like, I don't look like that.
Yeah.
That is not me.
But you are amazing at somehow finding the beauty in every person in your subject. So that's a major skill.
Well, I was talking to my sister-in-law. She was in Lake Powell and she was like, she sent me this picture that somebody took of her. She was driving the boat and she was
Yeah.
like doing this weird slouchy thing. Like her position, her posture was really weird. And she was like, had this like really like focus, like Napoleon Dynamite, like focus face. And the angle was like coming from below. And it was just like,
Yeah.
she was like, I don't look like this, right? Like this is probably the worst picture that's ever been taken of me. And I was like, that does not look like you.
Burn it
And I
now.
think like most of us don't have professional photographers following us around, but we have, iPhones. And so there's people taking pictures of us all the time, but they're
Yeah.
getting like our worst angles and like just terrible moments. And you start to think like, oh my gosh, is that what I look like? But then, you get pictures taken by somebody who knows how to capture your good angles and
Yeah.
is looking at you from the right perspectives and like I think people just don't get that opportunity a lot. So
No.
that's one form of like, my creative outlet where it's emotional. Like working with people on that level or like making a space feel a certain way. Like
Hmm.
that's the part that I love the most is like the emotional tag. But going back to original question, like work is different for me in that sense. Like
Yeah.
work is work. And I do wish sometimes that it was easier for me to pull part of that emotion into work because I think that only makes your process better, right? Like
Yeah.
if you can tap into that the part that's exciting for you, it
Sure.
pushes you more. And so when you're excited about something, that's when you want to see it from A to Z or whatever. You want to see every piece of it because you're emotionally invested. And so with work, I think I have a lot easier time delegating or picking up the pieces that aren't maybe as fun or like saying like you get this part, or you're really good at this, so you do this part and I'll
Yeah.
do this. Like Annalie is like an amazing illustrator and what's the word?
Uh,
Fonts.
yeah. Typographical
Type of
engineer, whatever you
typography.
want to call her. Yeah. She's
Yeah.
awesome though. Yep.
So sometimes I'll say like, hey, I have this idea of like the lettering that I want on this design piece, but like, can you do the lettering and I'll do the rest? Or like, and that's fine for me because I don't know. It's
Yeah.
fun at
She's a
work. It's
veteran.
like a different form, right? Like seeing
Yeah.
how everybody's skills come together and making sure that everybody's a part of a project, I think that's a fun It's a fun way to do work too. It's a fun way to be creative.
Totally agree, and I think that that's another perfect answer. So if this were an interview process, I'd you'd be hired. So
That's
uh,
good.
because I talk about that in previous episodes of this podcast is how it's important to have other creative outlets, and that from the outside looking in or whatever, someone might think that would lead to burnout or whatever, like how can you go and do what you do at work at home?
Mhm.
But to your point, it's a different type of experience. At home or in your side work, your side creative pursuits, you can, be yourself and just be vulnerable and share this is who I am, and I don't have to worry about does it fall in line with the brand for the company or uh because some who it's been my experience who come to work and that's their only creative outlet, they hang their heart on each design that they create, and then every time someone comes back to them with revisions or hey, can you
Jab to the
try that again?
soul.
Yeah, it's like
How dare
another
you
another
not
dagger to my
appreciate
heart.
my heart and soul on this piece of paper?
Exactly. But if you can separate yourself from that and say, hey, this is a paycheck, I'm gonna do a good job. My extracurricular creative pursuits are helping me to get better, like, and I'll apply that to work. But yeah, it is. It's commercial art in the end. It's not fine art like maybe what you can do on the side.
Yeah, it's true. It's a different process and I don't know. I think it is good to kind of separate those parts of yourself a little bit.
Yeah, it's great advice. So, in addition to the awesome perspectives you've shared to this point, is there anything that you can think of that if you could talk to Hillary, 8 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever, what type of advice would you give to someone in that position starting out? They've decided they've gone through the pre-med and the psychology and jumped from profession to profession, and they've landed on a creative field. Do you have any advice for that person?
I'm like the worst person to give that person advice because I'm in the middle of working on my master's degree and as a therapist right now.
Yeah.
I'm still in the middle of it. Like but I don't want to give anything up, right? Like I don't
Yeah.
want to like let go of any of the pieces. Like I love all the things I'm doing right now. Every one of them is bringing me a lot of joy and satisfaction in a lot of different ways. And so I'm just kind of adding more at this point with psychology. Like I kind of like how I said before, like they all kind of overlap in a way. Like for me, like the way that I look at design and the way that I look at decorating a home and the way that I do photography, it's all to me the best part or the most passionate part for me is the human experience of it and the way that other people feel when they come into my home and the way that they feel when they get their pictures back and
Yeah.
the way that they feel, getting this holiday mail or whatever, like I want to come to your party. I want to be in your home. I want or I feel beautiful or whatever their response is. And, with psychology, it's like people are coming to you with their problems and you're trying to give them a better experience, like give them make life a good experience. And, when I first got into psychology, I was like, the idea of sitting and listening to people just like bitch all day long just sounded like the worst job in the world. And then I went to therapy and I was like, that is not what this is. Like, this is a conversation. That's all it is. It's literally just a conversation. It's like a life coach. You're just talking to somebody who's kind of helping you see a new perspective. And that's all creativity is like giving people new perspectives. And so I don't know. I think my advice would be to just do what makes you happy, even if you have to change a million times, or even if you end up in a different career 10 years later, like there's nothing.
Yeah, so you wouldn't change it. You're happy with how things unfolded in your life. It's not like, oh, if only I would have picked this degree first. You look at it like the journey is what made me who I am today, essentially.
Totally. And I think, I don't know, I think that if I had stuck with photography or I mean with psychology when I first started, I don't know if I would have ended up in therapy when I did, and I wouldn't have had gained the perspective that I got. And all the experiences that you have, just if you allow them to, they let you be better at all of those things. And I think on one hand, like if I had stuck with one of those careers or found design earlier on, maybe I would have been a better designer at this point in my career. But I don't know if that's like the point for me. Like, I think for my personality and like all the things I like to dabble in, like I've just never been one who's like so obsessed with something that I have to become the best at it.
Yeah.
I just do it because I like it and I like the satisfaction of getting better. So I do push myself and I do try new things and learn from other people. But I don't think being the best is necessarily the goal. I think the goal is to just do what makes you happy.
I agree. That's awesome. Well said. And something again that I talked about in a previous episode. So it's awesome how much we're resonating here, or you just did your homework and listened to all the episodes. No,
I definitely did.
Good, but is just how important it is that just living life to the fullest, doing what you do, what you enjoy. Whether it's dance or photography or football or psychology, listening to people bitch, air quotes, then that helps inform who you are, and those things I think come out visually in your voice, whether it's your stuff at work that you're creating or in your side passions. So yeah, awesome. So guaranteed, the tens and tens of people who listen to this podcast. They're going to be
probably know them.
Yeah. Just in case, there may be one who doesn't know how to reach out to you and maybe dig more into what it is you do, or maybe they want some photography work done. What's the best way to reach out to you, Hillary? Like, is there a social platform that you're most active on? Or
I think Instagram is probably my most reachable.
Okay. What's your Instagram handle?
I get the spelling correctly. So it's just my name. But it's Hillary Taylor Harmon. I think I just switched it, so I just want to make sure. Yeah, Hillary Taylor Harmon on Instagram is my photography.
Okay. And how do you spell Taylor? T-A-Y or
T-A-Y-L-O-R.
Okay, awesome. Well, expect people to come flocking from this episode to your Instagrams. They're going to slide right into those DMs and request all of the good stuff that you can provide.
Well, thanks for having me. This was fun. I feel so honored to be on a podcast.
Oh no, I'm the one who's honored. It's been awesome to learn more about you and hear about your perspective. And I feel like this has been a healthy session. Like I've shared some of my problems. You've given me advice on. No, it's been awesome. So thanks so much for taking the time, and talk to you later. There you go. Another great episode in the books. Number 7. I really thought Hillary nailed it, especially regarding her thoughts around separating work creative from your personal creative pursuits. When someone has an unfettered creative outlet, they don't have to hang their creative self-worth on every work project, giving them the ability to roll with the punches that often come with the ever-present design by committee. Now, that doesn't mean we don't do our best work or don't care about the outcome. We're just able to look at things a little bit more clearly when we can scratch that creative itch elsewhere. If you enjoy this podcast and want to show your support, you know what to do. Tell your friends, tell your coworkers, and tell your family to listen and subscribe. And get you some merch at CRE8ORDIE.net. Keep on creating, my friends. Until next time, this is your retired pro pitcher and Bostonian bartender, working at the place where everyone knows your name. Ike Malone, Allred, signing off. Create or die.